Good afternoon, and welcome to the iGaming podcast. Today, really excited to have with us Ayre. And I don't know how many times I've said your name throughout the years without actually meeting you, I must say. How are you doing today, Calvin?
Very good, thank you.
Good. It's really great to have this podcast with you today personally. We spoke a little bit before here, and I mentioned that I come from a long iGaming background myself, starting in 2004, back in the poker days. And I remember you seeing kind of Bodog and the things that you built during that time on a day-to-day basis, and the parties and the lifestyle that you created around that brand. So now 15 years later, to have you in the podcast and to be speaking to you, it's a bit of an honor. So I want to just start off by thanking you for doing this today.
Yeah,
cool. And I wanted to kind of start off on that note. So Bodog obviously was the brand and the company that kind of made the big success that you have done built on. You became a billionaire, in the 2000s, and a lot of success and all the things. So I just want to start off with a little bit of a curveball, a bit philosophical side of things. Considering the incredible life that you've had, you've really made everything that you possibly can with your life, at least from an outside point of view. So do you feel that money does buy happiness?
I didn't start out doing what I do aiming at money, because primarily what I do is I'm a builder. I like the challenge of building things, and I really like having a vision of somewhere I want to go and then trying to do it. And my ambitions were decidedly a lot smaller when I was younger than what happened. But my own experience, I've had like no money when I was early on in my career, and I have lots of money now, and I've for a while now. And there's no question that money makes your life better. Money is like a lubricant that just makes everything easier around you. So yes, money itself doesn't buy happiness, but it removes irritants.
Yeah, that's I read that. It's a good way of putting it, I guess, too. I read that at some point too, that like money it doesn't buy happiness directly. Like you have to work for your own happiness.
Yeah, exactly. You have to make yourself happy.
Yeah, but it buys freedom.
Freedom and removes the irritants out of your life. Everything gets simpler.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
Classic example is the pandemic we're in right now. Traveling for most people is a pain in the ass. It is for me too, but at least it's still possible.
Yeah.
So for some people, it's almost impossible to travel around the world right now. But we're still moving around. It's a hassle, but I've got a whole team working on it, trying to figure out how navigate through what the path is, which place is open, where we have to be to get there. It's pretty funny actually, but we're doing it. We're still mobile a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So on that note, on the pandemic that we are going through right now. So from your perspective, Calvin, and the projects that you are involved in, it's highly digitalized world that we're in at the moment. But how has the pandemic affected you in general?
Well, most of the impact on me has been in my personal life. As I said, it's made it a lot more difficult to move. And certainly in the early days, when it first hit us, everyone was worried, especially people over 50 like myself. We're all like worried, is this thing going to take us out? So that was a little bit of something new for sure. Business-wise, I'm more focused on Bitcoin. I'm pretty much all in on Bitcoin stuff these days, in a number of different areas of the Bitcoin ecosystem. And I wouldn't say it's been like a boom for it, though I think, in fact, it will be. It is going to drive more industries towards what Bitcoin can do, the pandemic. But it certainly hasn't hurt it. I think some industries have been decimated by this. Airlines, this one, restaurants.
Of course.
So we're certainly not in that category. And anybody that's watching this video that's in the gaming space, gaming's done okay. I mean, a little bit down in some places, a little bit up in some, but my friends who are still in the gaming sector said that it's skated through. And I think longer term, this is going to be really good for online gaming, because I think a lot of people that are being trained to do their gaming online aren't necessarily, especially older people, they're not necessarily going to run straight back to a casino, especially if this virus, which does disproportionately affect older people, especially if the virus hangs around for a few years. So I think, I
sorry.
think it'll be good for the online gaming industry.
Yeah, I think on a high level, that is what we have seen already. With quarterly reports are coming out from various organizations, and on the casino side, it's certainly been an upswing in general in most markets. Whereas on the sports betting side, of course, it's been a little bit tougher.
But it's going to flip though. Once the sports come back, there's going to be a slam into sports, because what are people going to be doing? Sitting at home watching sports. So
of
if
course,
there's more lockdowns, right? So yeah.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, now the sport itself are now, restarting. Whereas it's just that you can't go and see the games, perhaps in the stadiums and these type of things. But I think you're absolutely spot on in the sense that in the online gaming world, or gaming world in general, the players who traditionally have played in casinos are now moved to online, and also you see that because a lot of the casinos themselves are starting online operations as well. We see that in the US a lot, but even in Europe, where the traditional casinos are trying to leverage their database to try to do something while the casinos are closed, drive traffic online. So this is just a push into that direction, just like in other industries too. I mean, restaurants you mentioned is the same thing too.
Pandemics, by definition, will increase the speed of trends that are already happening for digitization of everything, virtualization of everything. So, and I've also heard people call it the Amazonification of the world, where everything goes online. It was happening anyways. This is going to speed it up. And we're talking about getting rid of physical cash. We're talking about decreasing the attractiveness of going to a physical casino. I think a lot of that stuff. So, I mean, there's going to be some of these things aren't going to disappear entirely. Cash will, for sure. Physical casinos won't, because they're a slightly different experience. So there can be complementary still. But I think it's going to increase the speed of skewing towards virtual.
Yeah, it's an interesting world we live in, and like you're saying, it's kind of like the crisis forces innovation in a lot of ways. I mean, personally, I'm in the event side of things, in the event sphere, and similarly to other industries, when this crisis occurred, as kind of like a knee-jerk reaction, you start looking at what else can you do rather than physical events. And in the event sphere, the digital events were kind of the go-to recipe for a lot of my colleagues and ourselves included as well. And it's something I wanted to ask you actually, because I know that you guys are running a digital event now in a couple of days, even like on the 30th.
It's a hybrid, actually, to be fair.
It's a hybrid. Okay, can you explain that? It's a Coingeek conference?
It's predominantly digital in that the majority of the audience, we're live streaming it for free. We're letting everybody just come watch it. But it does have 2 points of presence in parallel that are physical. And what we did is it was originally going to be just a traditional conference with some live streaming, of course, because we've been doing that. But it's going to be a traditional conference in New York. And then the pandemic hit, and then we said, okay, well, let's reimagine this. So we went to this hybrid concept, and what we did is we put another physical presence in London. So we got London and New York, and the thinking was that it'd be 2 options for people to travel to that wanted to speak up on stage. I'm not 100% sure whether we have some people that are going to be speaking from other remote locations as well. I can't remember, but we definitely have 2 locations where people can speak, and we have the ability for a limited number of VIPs to sit in and watch these things and do a little bit of high-end networking. But the majority of it's going to be online, and there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff that it's going to be quite impressive, I think. So I think it's going to be highly interesting. You can go to Coingeek.com conferences or CoingeekConference.com, and you just register and watch the thing for free. And I think you'll be impressed with the content of how it explains how this technology works, but also the technology used for it. It should be a lot of fun. That starts September 30th for 3 days, so October 1st and 2nd as well.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I did a little bit research before, and I saw there was it's about 90 speakers in total. Your colleague Anna Collis, who is a super old friend of mine, by the way. Shout out to Anna. We used to organize the Swedish Poker Championships together back in 2006, me and Anna.
She's doing a great job. She actually found her way to New York from London somehow, hopping all over the world, and got there. She's there on the ground running things for us, so she's a trooper.
Yeah, she definitely is. Yeah, shout out to her. She mentioned to me as well that all the speakers will be streamed live. And now, as a fellow organizer organizing online events, I know how stressful that is. So I wish you I wish you all the best on that front, and hopefully the internet gods are on your side when you stream it from different continents. Yep. Yeah, so hopefully the internet gods are on your side when you stream that content live, because I know that it's not the easiest to put together a live event with everything that comes with that. So massive good luck on that side. I know as well that Calvin, the original plan was to have the Coingeek conference in New York physically, and to kind of really put a stamp into the coin the crypto industry as a really high level conference at the start. Can you explain it with like what the original plans were as well, and where you are going with this conference long term?
Okay, first, let's start out with some terminology here. Bitcoin is the industry that I'm in, and it's got nothing to do with the crypto industry, because Bitcoin is not a cryptocurrency. It is Bitcoin. It's its own thing. The cryptocurrency industry is all about speculative, manipulated casino exchanges where you know, they got their finger on the scale and the markets are going up and down, and the retail people are getting raped over the coals. That's the crypto industry. Bitcoin is a platform that creates utility that can be used to solve real world problems, enterprise problems. One of the applications that is rolling out next year, and they're going to be speakers at the conference, is EHR Data, which is a large pharmaceutical organization in the United States that's going to use this the data superpowers of the blockchain to break the silos that are data silos that are currently in the industry, pharmaceutical industry in the United States. And there's a smart city project that I know is being worked on that's been publicly stated and stuff like that. So enterprise adoption, solving real world problems, supply chain management, all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's what we're working on. And in a nutshell, this technology allows us to do sophisticated data management, but also monetize all data. And that can't be done with any other platform, because you need massive, near unlimited scaling, and that's what we have. Bitcoin SV, which is the original protocol, but it's got a different trading ticker, because the original trading ticker was stolen by the BTC camp that protocol forked away, and that's that protocol. They used the Bitcoin name as well, which they stole and are using improperly, because that actually is not Bitcoin. There's only one Bitcoin. That's the original protocol, and because the original protocol enforces the economic model, which is the secret sauce of Bitcoin. If you change the protocol and the economic model gets shifted, then it's not Bitcoin anymore. Whether they use the name or not, it doesn't matter. But it also doesn't work for what Bitcoin was designed to do. So Bitcoin, as originally designed, now trading as BSV, is a utility platform that's used for real world problems. And why is that important? Well, because it's able to do so much that can help the online gaming industry. And one of the speakers, well, actually, there's two gaming companies. One's an esports company and one's a traditional casino company. They're going to be speaking at my conference. And those are examples of how this technology can be used to create unique opportunities in the gaming space. And I'm not talking just about payments. So, of course, it's the lowest cost payment option as well, because 2 to the 5th is what it currently costs for a transaction, like 0.2 to the 5th decimals in pennies. And this technology, because of the way it's designed, as it scales up, it gets even cheaper. Whereas you see all these other platforms that actually don't know how to scale, what happens as soon as you put any load on them, the cost goes through the roof and they become untenable for any type of, like management rails or anything like that, or any type of microtransaction gaming application. So what we want to do, and there's gaming channels, specific gaming channels where there's people, including the people I just described, they're going to be on panels, they're going to be discussing this. And how this technology can work to solve gaming company problems, gaming industry problems. So I would recommend that people that think that Bitcoin is only a payment channel, or that it's only about these nonsense, zero utility, valueless coupons being manipulated on exchanges, if they think that's what this is about, they need to log on over the 3 days at Coingeek, or go to coingeek.com and just read the content I publish every day, and get it explained how this technology can be used to improve your business. There are gaming companies already, because I'm in contact with them, that are working on projects. They just haven't got public yet because they've kind of been doing them sort of skunkworks style. But I believe over the next few years, you're going to see more and more people that are realizing that they get competitive advantages by taking advantage of what this technology can do. But the starting point is understanding what the technology can do and why it's not crypto.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that, Calvin. So on that note, I mean, let's take a step back. I mean, 2008, I believe there was Satoshi Nakamoto who published a white paper outlining outlining Bitcoin, and I think that is what you mean with is that what you're touching on with the protocol that you guys are on a driving?
Yeah, to understand the original protocol, you've got to go back to that white paper. You've got to go to all the other writings that Craig published under the Satoshi Nakamoto name, and then you also have to look at the original code that was released open source. That all still exists. And in fact, the Bitcoin Association, the Swiss-based association that I'm one of the founders of, and it promotes the original Bitcoin protocol as a utility platform with real economic benefit and solutions for enterprise. They are in the process of getting a technical opinion done up by a group out of Europe, and I don't know how far along it is, but that's what this opinion will be about, whether or not the BSV technology follows the original protocol and has the superpowers that we claim it does. Yeah, which it does.
yeah, exactly. So let's start from the beginning a little bit. So you mentioned that this is the original protocol, and obviously there is Bitcoin. That's all laymen like me know about, and I've been kind of studying it on a high level since about 6-7 years ago. So I have a very high level idea of this.
I could explain in just a few sentences what has happened.
But I'd also like to
But confusing unless you hear my explanation.
Okay, tell me. What was that, Calvin? Can you repeat that, please? The last bit.
Yeah, it's very simple, actually. Yes. I can explain it simply, but without someone explaining it simply, because there's so much misinformation out there, it can be confusing.
Okay.
But this is what happened. Craig invented the technology. He released it open source as Satoshi Nakamoto. He stepped away. It was hijacked. People changed the protocol, but kept the ticker symbol and Bitcoin name. So eventually, Craig, myself, and others, we saved the protocol. We had to come up with a different ticker symbol because the original one was gone. So the original protocol is Bitcoin SV or BSV, and it does all the stuff it was originally designed to do, and it doesn't compete with these other things, other than the fact that they've stolen the brand and they're creating market confusion. But at an operational level, the technology I'm working on is designed to create enterprise solutions. Those other guys, digital gold narrative, which I think is nonsense, and all the rest of this token exchange nonsense, manipulated exchanges, that's not what we're doing. We're creating a platform that solves real world problems.
Okay. Can I ask you, Calvin, so far, what are the practical applications? As in, are there any tangible kind of results from the Bitcoin SV in general that are at the moment in practice kind of being launched at the moment?
Yeah, well, there's actually hundreds and hundreds of projects on the BSV technology, and you can go to the bitcoinassociation.net website, and you can go to Coingeek.com, and you can find out all sorts of stuff about it. You can also go to another Bitcoin Association website called bitcoinsv.com, and there's hundreds of resources there that explains all the different applications. There's consumer applications, lots of them. There's competitors for different social media applications like Powping, Twitch, and then there's the enterprise channel, which is like EHR Data is the most famous one of those, and there's a bunch more ones coming under the surface there. There's a company that's going to be announcing out of Europe here that's doing an enterprise application, which I invested in on my VC branch did. So there's just tons of things happening, and we're talking hundreds being announced every year. And that's why it's important for people to really wrap their head around it, to start paying attention to places where you can get real information. Because the nonsense casino sort of zero utility token space is running and doing all this stuff, and they want you to look over there. They put out a lot of nonsense about what we're really up to here, but we're not doing what they're doing. And to find out what we're doing, you need to go to sites that actually accurately cover it. That's Coingeek.com, BitcoinAssociation.net, BitcoinSV.com. Those are 3 great starting points where you find out all about it. But this technology can be used for so much, because what this technology does is allows nano transactions, like fractions of a fraction of a cent of transactions, nearly frictionless, nearly free. You think of it like free transactions. I mean, this is going to touch every area of your life. This is not about, if the Bitcoin white paper says peer-to-peer payments. That was just because explaining the whole narrative of what Craig was inventing would have been too much. So he focused on sort of like where it was all starting. And it's a huge thing. And merchant adoption will be the last place that it goes. So people are saying, well, you can't use it anywhere. Well, that's because that's not the starting point. It's not, merchant adoption won't be the start. You can certainly, if you're a merchant, by all means, accept it if you want, but it's going to start. The superpowers are going to allow enterprise solutions to be created, and it's going to allow consumer models that couldn't exist without the frictionless transactions and data storage capabilities. And that's where this is all going, and that's what I'm focused on. That's what I'm excited about, and that's what could help the gaming industry. So people in the gaming industry need to learn about this stuff.
We definitely do in general, I think. And if we take again a little bit more of a high-level kind of seat and a more philosophical point of view, when we go into the future now, Calvin, like how do you see this technology changing the world? Let's say from the capabilities that it has, and it's particularly within the iGaming industry, but also in the wider tech world.
Well, the iGaming industry, it's going to allow arguably free games. It's going to allow significant cost savings in infrastructure, because you could put some of the infrastructure out onto the general internet on the MetaNet overlay that's going to come out. It's going to crazily reduce costs in transaction processing. Those are going almost to zero. And I think provably fair, and the ability for people to have external audits real time. So regulators are going to be able to have a lot more comfort that the gaming companies are doing what they say they're doing. You could have point of transaction taxation as well in some jurisdictions. But that's in the gaming space. Outside of that, I mean, it's going to subsume the internet. It's going to be an overlay on the internet. That'll be the MetaNet. It's going to value all data. And so the exchange models right now, business models right now, where you're forced to give up your data, like using social media and whatnot, that'll all disappear. People are going to get a lot more power and control over the data. The microtransaction stuff is going to fundamentally change tons of industries, but one that's easy to understand is the Internet of Things, which is machine-to-machine commerce, will be able to take off at a massive level. So everything is going to be doing business with everything else. Of course, the machines themselves aren't going to be making profits, because the machines will be owned by businesses, will be owned by people. So the money will flow straight up to the existing structures at the commercial level. But these machines are going to be doing commerce with each other at the nano transaction layer, constantly all over the place. And it's going to be actually quite amazing what the implications are going to be of that.
And I guess a lot of these applications is hard to speculate on even right now, because kind of like when microtransactions became popular, it changed a lot in our spending habits. And now we are talking about kind of like nano transactions. And I spoke to another one of your colleagues, Becky, as well, Ligero, the other day, and she mentioned that you mentioned social media here as an example, and she said that like a practical application here, for example, could be that in the future of social media, when you create a post or a comment in a social media site, that you'll pay a small.
You're going to have to repeat this question, because I lost you for.
You lost me a little bit.
45 seconds there.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. So I was saying that I spoke to one of your other colleagues, Becky Ligero, who put this together today. So thank you for that, Becky. she mentioned that, for example, in the future, when we look at these like nano transactions and the applications in social media that you mentioned, for example, she said that in the future it could be that you, instead of you are the product as it is right now, it will become that you will pay a nano transaction to create a post, for example. But depending on the engagement to that post, you might actually then make that money back. So if you're an influencer, you make money by basically creating engaging content, for example. Is that a fair explanation?
Well, I believe that's what's going to drive the transition away from the old model to the new. It will be influencers, because if you've got a massive following and you're not getting paid anything for it, you have to find other ways to commercialize it, and you transfer over to one of these new platforms that are coming, of which I know a whole bunch that are being worked on in the BSV world right now. You'll instantly be monopolizing all your traffic. So I think that'll be a huge driver, and that's where I think this is all going to go. There's no question about it.
Yeah, and it's particularly social media is such a hot potato at the moment, with everything that's going on in the US, particularly with the election happening, and you have the left who are very adamant of how social media should be used, and you have the right who are also very adamant, and it seems like companies like Facebook are being attacked from both left and right, kind of how a potential regulation.
Yeah, I think Facebook's a disaster, and I think they're not handling their self very well. And I believe that they are extremely at risk of being heavily regulated if the Democrats get back into power. That's what I say. That's what I think.
But they have to. I mean, do you think that social media should be regulated?
You really open up a can of worms the second you start talking about it. But I mean. And I think that this new technology kind of solves a lot of the problems without regulation, because people are going to have to pay for stuff, and pumping fiction out there when you're not penalized commercially for it, in fact, a profit from it, actually creates an incentive for people to publish misinformation, which is part of the problem with the existing social media model. So I don't want to be calling for regulation. As much as I am a firm believer that regulation always comes, because governments don't leave things alone. So you have to plan for the regulation that you know is going to come. At that same time, I'm not a proponent of over-regulation. I like touch regulation. And I think that the superpowers of Bitcoin, the platform I'm working on, will in fact automatically create a healthier environment and reduce the need for regulation.
Yeah, it's such a hot potato. I think that it hasn't even, that discussion have hardly even begun yet, so to say. But it feels like it is a little bit behind the corner, like you're mentioning, especially if the Democrat takes the election. I agree with, but even the Republicans, I mean, are heavily criticizing, particularly Facebook, but also the other social media sites.
There's a difference, though. There's different. Republicans are criticizing them just because they're looking for enemies, I believe. I actually don't think they really have a regulatory plan. I think the Democrats actually have already been working on regulatory plans for social media, but let's see.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think like the Republicans' argument would be that the social media site and tech sites in general coming from the Bay Area and Silicon Valley and so forth are like heavily left-leaning, and therefore they're really dangerous.
But that's been disproven already. Facebook, in fact, is skews to favor Trump supporters because of how rabid they are and the way they can monetize it. So that's actually been disproven, and I actually don't think that the people that are in charge of these companies are necessarily left-leaning anymore. I think that the amount of money that they're making is changing their opinions on certain things.
That's absolutely true. But I think the bigger question. Sorry, go ahead.
I actually don't think that that's the case, especially with Facebook. I think Facebook is magnifying, and I think the studies have proven it's magnifying the right-wing messaging more than left-wing. So, and again, I actually don't believe that the Trump administration really has regulatory plans drafted up for social media. I think they're just they like to make enemies so that they can get their base fired up. But I think there is a real risk that regulation will come from the Democrats. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it definitely. I mean, social media definitely helps the polarization that we are seeing. And but I think the bigger question, I guess, is on the Republicans' argument that it's the is left-leaning people that are controlling social media in general. I think the bigger question that it is relevant, maybe even if it's not like that. I think the bigger question is perhaps that if they wanted to hit the button, they could. I think that's where the issue lies.
Can you repeat that question, please?
So I think the bigger question that the Republicans do have a point, so to say, even if they don't have, even if they are not right saying that it's controlled by a left ideologist agenda at the moment, but I think the bigger point is perhaps that the Google, Facebook, Twitter, they have so much power to change the algorithms that if they wanted to, they could. And the question is,
I mean,
I guess,
that's not a Republican argument. That's an argument
it's not.
both sides can make. But well, the evidence shows right now that Facebook, for sure, is, I mean, the Republicans are getting a lot of pro-Trump misinformation pumped out, way more so than the other side, and that's what the studies are all showing. So, I think that. But honestly, I think Facebook's a disaster anyways. I actually haven't, I try not to even use that site anymore.
Yeah, fair enough. So just to stay a little bit more on the topic of social media before we move on. I know that you're an avid social media user yourself, obviously, Calvin.
Not Facebook though.
not
I
Facebook, but it's Twitter. You are mainly
Twitter and LinkedIn only, because that's where my audience is.
Yeah, fair enough. And why would you, so on a high level, why would you say that Twitter is preferable to Facebook in the way they operate their organizations?
Yeah, because more business and tech people use it. Facebook is more families.
Oh, it's the audience, basically. That is
and then young people are more on Instagram and whatnot. That's not my audience either. Yeah, it's where my audience is. But I actually hate social media, so I find it very disgustingly toxic.
Oh, yeah, well,
I just use it because it's a necessary place to be right now. But I look forward to a future where the new Bitcoin social media economic models come out, and I hope that curbs some of the toxicity.
Yeah, I mean that's another point as well that is highly debated now. I mean, you yourself, I mean, you must have dealing with trolls for, I mean, since the very, very beginning of this, I would imagine.
I actually think I've been trolled since before there was trolls, because I was involved in the sports forum wars back in the 90s that were, I thought, toxic, and actually social media today is much more toxic than those forum wars were. But they were the what thickened my skin up, so I don't take it also personally anymore.
Yeah, it's incredibly toxic. I mean, and especially like for the kids that are growing up now as well. It's kind of like a Pandora's box, because if you have I have nieces, I don't have kids, but I have nieces that are young, and they have the option that either they can choose to not allow them to be on social media, but then they will be bullied, or they have to allow them, but then you open the Pandora's box that is just literally impossible to close. And you are immediately thrown into this toxicity. This is the problem, I think, for the future generation. Suicide rates goes up and things like that.
I always feel bad when I find out about kids overreacting to being trolled in social media and then doing something disastrous to their future. I hope the technology I'm working on will make the problems that kids face with social media and cyberbullying and all that kind of stuff less of a problem as well. But we'll see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think just to close off on the social media side, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you out of anyone have obviously seen the darkest side of this, and not everyone is as resilient as you are, so to say, dealing with that side of the internet, so to say. And the question is then, now for the future, how do you solve that problem? Is it through regulation? Is it through, like you're saying, your innovations, or something else? So this is a topic of its own as well that we can discuss.
I can tell you absolutely for sure. My experience is that if the new technologies that are coming down the pipe can't solve it, that governments will jump in and start imposing some kind of regulation. that's always how it ends up.
Yeah, I would say so as well. Yeah, I'm not going to drive further because there's so many things on the social media side that I'd like to talk about, but it's maybe not so on point to the discussion today. But Calvin, I'd like to take a step back a little bit. From personally, I'm really interested in the building brand side of things. It's something that I'm really passionate about for myself, for my own company, and how I try to kind of infuse a lot of soul and meaning into the brands that I built throughout the years. And I'm really curious to talk about this with someone like yourself on the level that you have built your brands. So I wanted to ask you kind of, when you created Bodog, I know that you didn't only create, Bodog Poker itself. I mean, you adopted kind of like a multi-brand strategy, branched out through a lot of things, and it really reminds me of kind of like what Richard Branson did with Virgin, for example.
Yeah.
Both how Virgin branched out to a lot of different things, but also using him as the brand a little bit. Can you talk a little bit of your philosophy when it comes about building brands?
Well, every company has to be different. The brand has to fit the industry. So you have to try and figure out what is going to give you some way to differentiate yourself brand-wise inside a particular industry. But the online gaming industry was pretty clear to me that we were in the entertainment business and that a lifestyle brand was the direction to go. And so I actually studied others out there. And I actually studied Richard Branson quite a lot and borrowed some of his philosophy in what I did. But of course, personality-wise, his personality and mine are different. So you also have to, if you're going to use yourself as a brand ambassador, then you have to pick things that are real enough about you. I mean, it doesn't have to be 100% real because you are kind of acting a little bit when you're doing your brand ambassadorial stuff. But it's got to be real enough that it's believable, because otherwise you come across as a fraud, right? Faking it. So I came up with my own brand image, borrowing from the philosophy of Branson and others that I studied. And I had a lot of fun with that. I made Bodog into a fun brand, and it really resonated with people. And I'd be in elevators wearing a Bodog shirt in somewhere in the United States, and people would see it and say, "Hey, I have a account in that brand," and start explaining to all their friends what it was. It was kind of fun.
Yeah, exactly. What would you say kind of, what would be some of your favorite brands outside of what you have created yourself? Like you mentioned Richard Branson and Virgin, of course, but do you have any other examples of brands that's done it like super well?
Well, you know all the same big brands I do, but one of the things that you'll see that's common across brands that do a good job is that they pick a name that doesn't really have any, completely unrelated, like Apple, but they get a name that doesn't have any direct bearing on their industry, and that gives them a blank slate that then they can write all the brand values to it over by the campaigns that they run, and create meaning with that word for that brand. And that's what I did with Bodog, and that's what I'm attempting to do with some other companies in the Bitcoin space right now.
Yeah. So
one of the things I don't like is the fact that BTC and others have stolen the Bitcoin brand, because I could have had some fun creating a brand around Bitcoin, and we're going to do it anyways. I mean, this is just a temporary kind of like a speed bump. But we've got the nonsense branding that they've done to sort of over right now, which is always a lot harder than having an empty sheet to put a brand values to. But over time, we're going to be able to get our brand values out. The Bitcoin was created to solve real world utility problems, and what isn't this digital gold or whatever other false narratives that these guys are trying to attach to the name.
Yeah. So back in the day, you identified that gaming is about entertainment, it's about the fun, the win and have this lifestyle and all of this crazy things. What would you say is the recipe for the Bitcoin brands that you're building on, if you compare the two?
Well, they're completely different.
Yeah,
Tal, as an example, is a infrastructure company, and so it's going to have to be more serious. But yet, I still wanted a catchy name, short domain, a backstory. I mean, Ta'al's a volcano. It actually erupted right around the same time as we did the name change in the company and rolled out the new brand. We actually had an eruption. So that was kind of interesting. I'm sure we'll be able to use that in the future as we move the company forward. Another company I'm a shareholder in, but not as deeply involved in the branding because they'd already set the branding up before, is another infrastructure play. The software side more so than the hardware, although Ta'al will be both as well, but it's more exclusively hardware and software and patents. And they've got a good brand already, and it's about technical competence and stuff. And they unfortunately have had a lot of money thrown at them in a smear campaign, but just the sheer competency of the Enchain Group and its patent portfolio and its ability to execute on its business plan is really doing the job of branding it. And I think that brand's going to be in good shape. And there's other companies that I advise on that I'm actually not a shareholder in branding out in the industry. And I don't want to say their names because I think some of these relationships should stay private for right now. But I mean, it's going to be completely different. I think you are going to find some of the consumer-facing applications that could, in fact, go with this pure lifestyle brand as well. I think there's one company in the social media space that's trying to do it, but they've got it all a little wrong, and they're coming across as kind of childish and annoying.
Which one?
Not really inspirational. I don't want to name names right now.
Okay.
Deal with all these people, but
yeah.
But I think you're going to get the whole basket across because Bitcoin, as an industry, as an ecosystem, it's got a bunch of different pillars. You know, it's got its infrastructure side, it's got its consumer application side, it's got its finance and payment side. It's probably got a few. It's got its merchant component. So it's got a bunch of different things. Internet of Things probably would fit into the infrastructure side of it, most likely. But you can see that there's these different things. This technology is just so broad that it's going to have actual market silos where there's going to be kind of a different mentality in the different silos. And the branding will have to be tied to what it is they're trying to accomplish in each one. So it's going to be very customized. Yeah. So, but I look forward to helping people. You know, people come to me all the time in the industry and ask me for my branding opinions. I'm happy to help. I'd love nothing better to get involved with another consumer-facing application, actually, on the Bitcoin side, and jump back in and start doing some brand ambassador stuff. So that'd be fun.
Yeah, exactly. I think no one would mind that. Start the journey all over again. The Bodog, but So on that note, we have a couple of minutes left. I would like to get in kind of a last question as well, which is on the investment side of this one. So we talked about branding now. You're obviously involved in a lot of different companies, and you invest in a lot of different organizations. If I understand it correctly, you focus primarily or only on Bitcoin-facing investments.
Yeah, not exclusively, but significantly.
Mostly.
And if you want to find out a little bit more about what I do, you can go to my Ayre.group website, which is my parent sort of brand for everything I do globally, and. There's a portfolio section in there that talks a little bit about it. And in fact, you can even contact with me with a project if you think you've got one that I might be interested in. Cool. But I significantly invest in the Bitcoin ecosystem, the BSV Bitcoin ecosystem that is based on solving real world problems. Why? Because I believe that is going to be one of the most explosive areas of growth the world has ever seen ever in history. A, B, because I like to invest in things I understand, and I really understand this space.
Okay.
And C, because I'm attracted to the earliest nascent period of the evolution of an industry, the so-called Wild West phase, and that's what we're in here. And so it's right up my alley. I just feel it fits me like a glove, so I'm having fun.
Yeah, I can tell. So when you decide to do an investment, when you decide to invest in a project, can you talk through? There's a lot of young entrepreneurs who are trying to figure things out and to understand and avoid pitfalls and do the right thing and so forth. What would you say are the most important things to think about as a young entrepreneur or a young investor when you either seek investment or when you are looking to invest?
Starting a company is painful. It's a lot of work, long hours. So I highly recommend people try and find something that they're actually interested in, because forcing yourself to do that long hours of low paid labor that comes with startups is very, very painful if you're doing something you actually detest. So finding a project that you actually like, so that the long hours at low pay doesn't seem like you're working in the salt mines is good. You have to, if you don't understand the industry segment that you're in, you should go get some education. You can't just guess. You can't just wing it. The world's way too complicated for that. So learn what you're up against, and try and figure out what the path is to revenues, because revenue money is way cheaper than venture capital money. And if you're really good and you're able to, if you're talking about a Bitcoin project as an example, and you're a programmer and you can actually do it yourself, build it and throw it out and test it and see if people start using it and sending you money, and you don't need any VC money, even better. I mean, I started out, I didn't take VC money. I bootstrapped it. It was painful as hell, but I loved what I was doing. And as a result, I ended up owning everything. So that was a great move, but it was painful at the time, even as much as I loved it.
Yeah. I mean, for you starting Bodog, I mean, it must have been insane to build all that technology, understand. I mean, it's not like you're getting served on a plate like these days with suppliers.
It was more complicated than that, though, because it wasn't just the technology, because I had to build the industry. There was no place to go.
Yeah.
No, the industry didn't exist.
Yeah.
So, and it was illegal to do what I was doing in Canada. So I had to figure out where to set up the servers, where could be what. And I had to study network design, so I could understand what was possible, what various pieces I could put in various jurisdictions. And of course, we had no money, so I had to do my own legal research as well, instead of hiring lawyers. Yeah. It was a lot of work, but yeah, like I said, it's a lot of fun too.
Yeah. I mean, a living proof that hard work pays off. Coming from nothing as you did, and working your way all the way to where you are now in a nice suite in northern Italy. Many years later.
I'm going to get a glass of wine, because you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and I'm perfectly happy with my old tricks.
That's a good way of putting it. And here I am with a glass of water, but I guess that's a little bit of a synonym of what's to come later. Water now, wine later.
I'm going to go get some good Italian wine after this.
Yeah, you earned it, buddy. Calvin, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on today, despite little connection issues here and there. But it's super interesting just to pick your mind and hear your opinions about how to drive companies. Obviously, the projects that you're building now, Bitcoin SV, the future. I mean, everything. So I wanted to just thank you so much for doing this today, for taking the time. I'm going to have your glass of wine now, but do you want to say any last words before we finish up today?
No, I think I've covered what I'm interested in saying, and this has been fun. I missed the online gaming industry. I felt it really fit me like a glove. The only reason I left it is because it matured, and it wasn't the Wild West that I grew up with. So yeah, I still have a piece in my heart for it. So yeah, nice talking.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Calvin. Have a great rest of the day.
Okay.